No human had ever been harmed by an alien. Until today. Captain Ben Carter stood at the command deck of the USS Horizon, staring at the distress signal flashing on the screen. His gut told him something wasn't right. Xiphos 9, a peaceful research colony, had just sent out a Level 1 emergency alert, the highest level of distress in the Galactic Alliance. "Put it through," Carter ordered. The screen flickered. Static. Then, a voice, panicked, gasping for breath. "This is Dr. Paul Reeves. We need help. He attacked me." A scream. Then silence. The transmission cut off. The bridge crew sat frozen. Xiphos 9 was a safe zone. A place where aliens and humans coexisted in peace under strict diplomatic laws. But that wasn't what made Carter's blood run cold. It was what the doctor had said. "He attacked me." "Who?" Carter asked, as if expecting an answer from the dead silence. The comms officer, Lieutenant Briggs, hesitated. "Sir, we received one more transmission before it cut out. Security footage from the colony's central lab." "Show me." The footage appeared on the main screen. It was grainy but clear enough. A research facility. A human scientist, Dr. Reeves, stood alone, backing away from a towering figure. An alien. Not just any alien. Ambassador Kelvok. A respected leader from the Xiphori species. Known for their rigid honor code, their strict diplomacy, their unwavering loyalty to the Galactic Alliance. And yet, in the footage, Kelvok stood over the injured scientist, his four-clawed fingers dripping with human blood. A deep silence fell over the bridge. Lieutenant Briggs spoke first. His voice shook. "Sir, this can't be right. The Xiphori have never harmed a human before. Ever." Carter's grip tightened on the console. "I know. It was a universal law, an unbreakable truth. Aliens never harmed humans. It was part of the Alliance's foundation, a deeply rooted principle across dozens of species. And yet, the footage told a different story." "Get us to Xiphos 9, Carter ordered. "Now." The Horizon jumped into warp, speeding toward the colony. Carter's mind raced. Was Kelvok compromised? Was this an act of war? Was humanity in danger? One thing was certain. The unspoken rule had just been broken. And Carter was about to find out why. The USS Horizon dropped out of warp above Xiphos 9, a once thriving research colony now bathed in eerie silence. Captain Ben Carter stood at the viewing deck, his jaw tightening as he took in the scene. The colony's lights flickered, and no one responded to hails. Still no response from ground control, Lieutenant Briggs reported, frowning. "Commander Rayner, assemble a team," Carter ordered. "We're going down." Minutes later, Carter and a 5-man security team descended onto the colony in a drop shuttle. As the ship touched down in the main square, a bitter silence greeted them. No welcoming committee. No panicked survivors. Just emptiness. Carter's instincts screamed at him, this wasn't right. The team moved cautiously toward the central lab, where Dr. Paul Reeves had sent the distress call. Inside, they found shattered equipment, overturned furniture, and blood. A thick trail of crimson streaked across the floor. It led toward a storage room door, slightly ajar. Carter raised his weapon. "On my mark." With a swift motion, he pushed the door open. Inside, a man lay slumped against the wall, Dr. Reeves. His breathing was ragged, his lab coat soaked in blood. Briggs rushed forward, kneeling beside him. "Doctor, can you hear me?" Dr. Reeves' eyelids fluttered. He was weak but alive. His fingers twitched as if trying to form words. "Doctor, who did this to you?" Carter pressed. Reeves' lips barely moved. Kelvok, he wasn't himself. His eyes, something was in his eyes. Carter's heart pounded. What do you mean? Reeves swallowed hard. Not Kelvok, not just Kelvok. The doctor's hand trembled as he reached for a small data pad and placed it in Carter's palm. It's inside them, Reeves whispered. Inside, us. Then, his body went limp. Briggs checked for a pulse. He looked up, shaken. He's gone, sir. A cold chill ran down Carter's spine. Inside us? What did that mean? Before he could process the words, the team's comm units crackled. Horizon to ground team. We have a problem. Carter tapped his earpiece. What's going on? The voice on the other end was filled with tension. Kelvok is missing. The Galactic Council has ordered us to stand down. They want us to leave the colony. Immediately. Carter stiffened. Leave? He looked at Dr. Reeves' lifeless body. At the blood on the floor. At the security footage still fresh in his mind, Kelvok, standing over an injured human. None of this made sense. And now, the Galactic Council wanted them to turn away? His gut told him one thing. This was a cover-up. The cover-up begins. Back on the horizon, Carter studied the data pad Reeves had given him. It contained encrypted files, lab reports, security logs, and audio recordings from the colony's research teams. Lieutenant Briggs worked quickly to crack the encryption. Got it, Briggs finally said, pulling up a video file. The screen flickered to life. It showed Dr. Reeves inside a medical lab, speaking hurriedly into a recorder. Subject's condition is deteriorating. His behavior is erratic. He resists treatment. I don't know if he can still hear me. The camera panned to a figure strapped to a medical bed, Kelvok. His powerful body twisted in pain, his normally composed expression replaced with something terrifying. His eyes, once a deep emerald, were now pitch black. I think it's a parasite, Reeves continued, his voice shaking. Something ancient. Something that shouldn't exist. But it's not just Kelvok. It's spreading. The recording ended. A stunned silence filled the room. Captain. Briggs swallowed. If this parasite can take over a Zifiri ambassador, then it can take over anyone. Carter exhaled slowly. His worst fear had just been confirmed. This wasn't just a single act of violence. It was an outbreak. And the Galactic Council was hiding it. A mysterious warning. Carter stood at the bridge, staring at the incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. He had a choice, obey orders and leave, or investigate the truth. The comms officer hesitated. Sir, they're waiting for a response. Carter exhaled. Patch it through. The screen lit up with the stern face of Senator Valtor, a high-ranking official in the Galactic Alliance. His expression was unreadable. Captain Carter, Valtor said smoothly. Xiphos 9 is under quarantine. You are ordered to depart immediately. Do not interfere. Carter kept his expression neutral. With all due respect, sir, we just recovered a human casualty. And Ambassador Kelvok is missing. We can't just leave. You will leave, Valtor cut in sharply. For your own safety. This is not your concern. The transmission cut off. Briggs swore under his breath. That was a threat. Carter didn't need confirmation. He already knew the answer. But before he could speak, another private message blinked on his screen, a direct transmission from an unknown sender. He opened it. One simple sentence appeared on the screen. If you want to know the truth, go underground. Carter's heart pounded. Someone was trying to help them. And he had a feeling the real nightmare was just beginning. Captain Ben Carter had been in space long enough to recognize a cover-up when he saw one. The Galactic Council wanted them gone. The official orders were clear: leave Xiphos 9. Forget this ever happened. But the encrypted message on his screen said otherwise. If you want to know the truth, go underground. Someone on the colony was still alive. And they wanted Carter to find them. He turned to his crew. We're going back down. Briggs hesitated. Sir, the council ordered us to. I know what they ordered, Carter said, voice firm. And I also know when someone's hiding something. We're going underground. Briggs sighed. You realize this could get us court-martialed? Carter gave him a sharp look. Only if we survive. The descent into darkness. Armed and ready, Carter led a small team back to the abandoned colony. This time, they weren't heading for the research labs. They were heading for Sublevel 3, an underground sector not listed in any official schematics. The entrance was hidden beneath the colony's power grid, behind a sealed bulkhead. Carter examined the control panel, noting the scorch marks and clawed scratches on the metal. Whatever's down here, he muttered, someone didn't want it getting out. Briggs hacked into the system. The doors hissed open, revealing a rusted metal staircase leading down into darkness. A rank, metallic stench filled the air. The team switched on their helmet lights and descended. Each step echoed, swallowed by the suffocating silence. Then, a sound. A faint shuffling in the darkness below. Carter raised a hand. Hold position. The sound grew closer. Slow. Uneven. Something was down here. A figure emerged from the shadows, staggering forward. The team raised their weapons. Wait. Carter barked. He's human. The man collapsed. Briggs rushed to check him. His face was gaunt, his eyes wild with fear. His uniform bore the insignia of a Xiphos 9 researcher. Please, he gasped, clutching Carter's arm. You have to stop it. Stop what? Carter demanded. The man's breathing was ragged. The parasite, we tried to contain it. We failed. Carter's stomach tightened. Where did it come from? The scientist's hands shook violently. It's not from here. It's ancient. Older than the Alliance. Older than us. Briggs looked uneasy. How do you know? The scientist shuddered. Because it speaks. A chill ran through the team. Then, from the darkness ahead, a voice. A voice that was not human. You should not have come. The voice in the dark. The word slithered through the air, deep and inhuman. Carter's grip tightened on his weapon. Show yourself. Silence. Then, movement. Something huge stirred in the shadows. The team's lights flickered, revealing a grotesque figure lurking just beyond the reach of their beams. It was Kelvok. Or what used to be Kelvok. His once proud alien form twitched unnaturally, his emerald eyes now pitch black. His mouth twisted into something almost human, yet not. Briggs whispered, Captain, he's infected. Carter took a slow step forward. Kelvok? Can you hear me? The thing that was Kelvok tilted its head, as if confused. Then, it spoke. But the voice that emerged was not his own. Kelvok is gone. We are many. The words sent ice through Carter's veins. The scientist grabbed Carter's sleeve. It's not just taking over bodies, it's absorbing minds. Everything Kelvok was, his memories, his knowledge, it's part of them now. Carter's heart pounded. What do you want? The parasite's voice slithered through the darkness. Survival. It lunged. Carter barely had time to react before bullets ripped through the air. The team fired, but Kelvok was fast. Too fast. Briggs shouted, "It's adapting. Normal rounds aren't stopping it." Carter grabbed the scientist and hauled him back. "Move. Fall back." The team sprinted up the stairs, the parasite-possessed Kelvok chasing them, inhumanly fast. They barely made it through the bulkhead before Carter slammed the override switch, sealing the door shut. A heavy thud shook the metal as the creature slammed into it from the other side. Then, silence. Carter turned to the scientist, breathing hard. "Tell me how to stop it. Now." The scientist wiped the sweat from his face. "We were working on a way to isolate it. A neural frequency disruptor. It might be able to force the parasite out." Briggs frowned. "And does it work?" The scientist hesitated. Then, his voice dropped to a whisper. "We never got the chance to test it." Carter's jaw clenched. They needed answers. Fast. And they needed to find out who had sent that mysterious message. Someone else on Xiphos 9 still had the real truth. And they were running out of time to find them. The bulkhead door rattled under the force of whatever Kelvok had become. The steel groaned but held firm. For now. Captain Ben Carter exhaled slowly, steadying his racing heart. He turned to the scientist, who was still shaking from the encounter. "You said there's a way to force the parasite out," Carter pressed. "A frequency disruptor. Where is it?" The scientist, Dr. Adrian Holt, wiped sweat from his forehead. It's in the main research lab." But the entire system went into lockdown after the first attack. "We never had time to activate it." Briggs muttered, "Of course it is." Carter activated his comm unit. "Horizon, this is Carter. We need immediate scans on the research lab's location. What's our best entry point?" A moment later, the ship's AI Zara responded in her calm, synthetic tone. "Captain, the research lab is intact, but life signs are minimal. One faint human reading detected. However, motion sensors indicate multiple unknown entities moving in and around the area." Carter exchanged looks with his team. "Great," Briggs sighed. "More of them." Carter turned back to Holt. "Tell me everything you know about this parasite." The scientist hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's not just a parasite. It's ancient. It infects neural pathways, overriding personality, instincts, everything. It doesn't just take control, it becomes its host." Briggs frowned. "Then why hasn't it spread across the entire alliance by now?" Holt swallowed. "Because it needs a certain kind of host. One with complex emotions." Carter stiffened. "You mean, humans?" Holt nodded grimly. "And certain aliens, like the Xipheri. Their emotional depth makes them vulnerable." Carter's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a biological invasion. It was a war for control. And if the parasite reached the wrong people, humanity could be lost forever. Infiltrating the lab. Armed and ready, the team moved quickly toward the research facility, sticking to the colony's darkened corridors. The entire base felt eerily abandoned, no sounds, no movement, just the distant hum of failing power systems. But they weren't alone. Briggs suddenly raised a fist, signaling them to stop. Carter followed his gaze. A shadow moved ahead. A lone figure stood at the far end of the hallway. Tall, humanoid, unmoving. "Kelvok?" Carter called out, his voice cautious. The figure twitched. Then, its head snapped unnaturally to the side. Holt grabbed Carter's sleeve. "That's not him." Carter tightened his grip on his weapon. "Lights on. Now." The moment their beams hit the figure, the truth was revealed. It wasn't Kelvok. It was Lieutenant Harris. One of Carter's own crew members. Or what was left of him. Harris's eyes were pitch black. His veins pulsed with an unnatural dark energy. His mouth curled into something that was almost a smile, but not his own. "Captain," the thing inside Harris rasped, its voice layered with something inhuman. Briggs cursed. "Oh, hell no." The creature took a step forward. "Why do you resist?" it whispered. Carter didn't hesitate. "Fire." The team unloaded their weapons, bullets tearing into Harris's infected body. He staggered, black ichor spraying against the walls. But he didn't fall. Instead, he laughed. "Bullets do not stop us." Then, he moved. Faster than any human should be able to. Briggs barely had time to dodge before the infected officer lunged, his strength inhuman. Carter grabbed his shock baton and slammed it against Harris's ribs, sending thousands of volts through his body. The parasite-infested officer jerked violently, letting out a shriek, but still didn't go down. "Captain!" Holt yelled. "The disruptor, it's the only way." Carter made a split-second decision. "Fall back. Get to the lab, now." The team sprinted down the corridor, the infected Harris right behind them. The final barrier. They burst into the research lab, slamming the doors shut behind them. "Seal it," Carter ordered. Briggs immediately engaged the emergency locks. Bang! The doors shook violently as Harris slammed into them. "You cannot hide," the parasite hissed from the other side. Carter ignored it and turned to Holt. "The disruptor, where is it?" Holt ran to a storage locker, his hands shaking as he pulled out a small metallic device about the size of a briefcase. "This is it," he panted. "But it only works if we can get it within 5 meters of the infected." Briggs frowned. "So what, we just ask him to hold still?" Carter's eyes hardened. "No. We bring him to us." Briggs blinked. "That is the dumbest idea I've ever." Bang! The doors buckled. The parasite was getting through. Carter looked at Holt. "How fast can you power it up?" Holt swallowed. 2 minutes. "You have 1. Carter turned to Briggs. "Get ready. When that door breaks, we need to hold it in place long enough for Holt to activate the disruptor." Briggs sighed. "I really hate this plan." The metal creaked, one final slam, and the doors burst open. The thing that had been Harris lunged forward, its black veins pulsating. Carter didn't back down. He charged forward, tackling the infected officer, holding him down with everything he had. "Now, Holt." The scientist activated the disruptor. A high-pitched pulse filled the room. The parasite inside Harris screamed. Its body convulsed violently, black tendrils writhing beneath his skin. Then, the darkness in his eyes vanished. Harris let out a final shuddering breath. His body went limp. The parasite was gone. The disruptor had worked. Briggs exhaled. Holy hell, it actually worked. Carter knelt beside Harris's motionless form. "He's still breathing." Holt wiped sweat from his brow. "We just proved it, this thing can be stopped." Carter stood. "Then we're taking this fight to the source." The team gathered themselves. The battle. The team gathered themselves. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. But now, they had a weapon. And Carter was going to make damn sure every parasite in the galaxy knew it. Captain Ben Carter didn't believe in miracles. But watching the parasite writhe and vanish from Lieutenant Harris's body was as close to one as he'd ever seen. It proved one thing, they could fight back. But they still had no idea how far this infection had spread. Carter turned to Dr. Adrian Holt, who was still clutching the frequency disruptor like it was his lifeline. "This device, can we amplify it?" Carter asked. Make it strong enough to purge an entire area at once? Holt hesitated. In theory, yes, but we'd need a high-powered energy source. Something way bigger than what we have here. Briggs, who was still catching his breath after the fight with Harris, sighed. Let me guess. The only power source that big is back on the horizon. Carter's jaw clenched. Not just the horizon. The entire colony's main reactor. If we can hook it to the disruptor, we might be able to wipe the parasite out for good. Holt frowned. That's a long shot. The reactor is in the colony's central command station, right in the middle of the infected zone. Even if we make it there, we'd have to override security protocols, reroute the power, and pray the thing doesn't explode in the process. Briggs snorted. Fantastic. So it's basically a suicide mission. Carter smirked. Nothing new for us, then. Briggs groaned. I hate this job. The unseen enemy. The team moved fast, making their way toward the central command station. The colony was eerily silent, too silent. Every shadow felt like it was watching. Holt was right. If this parasite had existed for centuries, why had it suddenly surfaced now? Carter's gut told him they were missing something big. As they reached the station doors, a voice crackled over the comms. Captain Carter. Stop where you are. The team froze. The transmission was coming from the horizon. And the voice belonged to Senator Valtor. Carter's blood ran cold. Senator. Funny, I thought you wanted us to leave. There was a pause. Then Valtor spoke again, his tone dangerously calm. I warned you, Captain. You are meddling in things far beyond your station. Carter clenched his fists. And you knew about this parasite all along, didn't you? Silence. Then, Valtor sighed. You need to understand, Captain. This is not an accident. This is a test. Carter felt like he'd been punched in the gut. A test? Briggs muttered, I knew it. I freaking knew it. Valtor continued, his voice disturbingly even. Decades ago, we discovered the parasite buried deep beneath an uncharted planet. We believed we could control it, turn it into a weapon. Carter's blood boiled. So you let it spread on purpose? Not at first, Valtor admitted. But when we saw what it could do, how it could take over entire species, we knew it was something far greater than just a simple infection. Briggs cursed. You used Kelvok as a test subject, didn't you? He was an unfortunate casualty, Valtor said. But his sacrifice provided us with valuable data. And now, Captain. I'm afraid I can't let you interfere. Carter's mind raced. This wasn't just a cover-up, this was genocide. They were deliberately allowing the parasite to spread. He took a slow breath. Senator, you have two choices. You can let us end this thing, or we can take this story straight to the Galactic Alliance. A pause. Then, Valtor chuckled. You're still thinking too small, Captain. The Galactic Alliance already knows. The trap is set. Carter's hands clenched into fists. You're saying, the Alliance is allowing this? The Alliance understands the necessity of sacrifice, Valtor said smoothly. If we control the parasite, we control everything. Every species. Every civilization. Think of the power. Shut up, Carter snapped. Valtor sighed. I was hoping you'd see reason. But I expected this. Goodbye, Captain. The transmission cut off. And then. The alarms blared. Holt paled. Oh, no. Briggs checked his scanner. His face went white. Oh, hell. Carter didn't need to ask. They had company. Dozens of infected figures were closing in on their location. Valtor had set them up. This was never about stopping us, Carter realized. This was about trapping us here. Holt was already working frantically at the control panel. I can override the system, but I need time. Carter turned to Briggs. Buy him some. Briggs took position by the doorway. Oh, you mean hold off a horde of alien zombies? Sure, why not? The first infected rounded the corner. Its blackened eyes locked onto them. Then, it charged. Briggs opened fire. The bullets slowed it down but didn't stop it. Carter pulled out a shock grenade and tossed it. The explosion ripped through the hall, sending infected bodies flying. But more were coming. Dozens. Holt cursed. Almost there. Carter didn't look back. He held his ground, firing round after round, his mind already racing for a plan. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely trapped. But they still had one advantage. They had the disruptor. And Carter wasn't leaving without a fight. Captain Ben Carter had been in plenty of bad situations before. But this? This was the worst. His team was trapped inside the command station, surrounded by infected creatures that used to be human and alien alike. The parasite had turned them into mindless weapons, faster, stronger, relentless. And Valtor, the corrupt senator, had made sure there was no way out. Except, there was one way. The colony's main reactor. If they could reroute its power into the disruptor, they could send out a pulse that would wipe out the parasite completely. But if they failed, the reactor would explode, taking them, and the entire colony, down with it. Carter exhaled sharply. Better than letting this thing spread. How much longer, Holt? He asked, firing another round into the oncoming swarm. Holt frantically worked at the control panel. Just a few more seconds. Briggs cursed. We don't have a few seconds. The infected were pushing through the doorway. Carter grabbed a shock grenade and hurled it. A burst of electricity arced through the air, frying half a dozen creatures on impact. But more kept coming. Carter reloaded. They weren't going to last much longer. Then, the console beeped. Holt spun around. I've got it. The reactors linked to the disruptor. Carter didn't hesitate. Do it. Now. Holt slammed the activation switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a high-pitched pulse tore through the air. The effect was instant. The infected staggered, their bodies seizing violently as the parasite inside them was forced out. One by one, the creatures collapsed, their blackened eyes fading to their natural state. Even the ones further away froze in place, convulsing as the disruptor's frequency ripped through them. The air was filled with inhuman screams as the parasite's grip was shattered. And then, silence. Nothing moved. No more attacks. No more infected. It was over. Carter let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Briggs leaned against a console, panting. Holy hell, it actually worked. Holt collapsed onto a chair, exhausted. We did it. But Carter wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because one problem remained. The reactor core. It was overloading. A desperate escape. How bad is it? Carter asked. Holt frantically typed into the console. Well, we might have fried the core. And by might, I mean definitely. Briggs groaned. Why is it always a doomsday clock with us? Holt grimaced. We've got 5 minutes before this whole place blows. Carter didn't waste time. Move. The team sprinted through the facility, dodging fallen bodies as they rushed toward the exit. Their only hope was the horizon. If they didn't make it back in time. Carter shook off the thought. Focus. One step at a time. They reached the landing pad just as the Horizon hovered overhead, its thrusters kicking up dust. The ship's hatch opened, and the remaining crew rushed to pull them aboard. As soon as they were in, Carter slammed the intercom. Get us out of here, now. The Horizon blasted away at top speed, rocketing into space just as Xiphos 9 erupted. A blinding fireball engulfed the colony, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The crew watched in stunned silence as the colony was wiped from existence. The parasite. The infected. The research. All of it, gone. And for the first time in hours, Carter finally let himself breathe. It's over, Briggs muttered. Holt slumped against the wall, exhausted. We won. But Carter wasn't so sure. Because somewhere out there, Valtor was still alive. And he wasn't finished yet. The Horizon drifted in the quiet of space, watching as the remnants of Xiphos 9 floated in the void. Everything, the colony, the research, the infected, was gone. But Carter knew this fight wasn't over. Senator Valtor had orchestrated this entire nightmare. And even now, he was still out there. Carter turned to Lieutenant Briggs and Dr. Holt, who sat exhausted on the bridge. We need to send a report to the Galactic Alliance, Briggs said. Tell them everything. Expose Valtor. Carter shook his head. You really think they don't already know? Briggs hesitated. You're saying the Alliance knew, Carter finished. And let it happen. Holt rubbed his face. So what do we do? Just let them get away with it? Carter stared out at the wreckage. His crew had risked everything to stop the parasite. But the real enemy wasn't a mind-controlling organism. It was the men in power who had let it loose. They had two choices. Go public. Try to leak the truth, at the risk of being silenced forever. Disappear. Stay quiet and live to fight another day. Carter had never been good at staying quiet. The truth must be heard. Carter turned to his crew. Valtor and the Alliance wanted control. They thought they could use the parasite to dominate entire civilizations. Briggs frowned. But it backfired. Exactly, Carter said. And now they'll cover their tracks. We destroyed the colony, but how long before they try again? How long before another test? Holt shook his head. So you want to expose them? Carter exhaled. Not just expose them. We need proof, undeniable evidence that forces the Alliance's hand. Briggs crossed his arms. That sounds like a good way to get killed, sir. Carter smirked. You scared? Briggs rolled his eyes. No. Just annoyed. Carter looked at the black box data recorder from Xiphos 9, still in Holt's hands. This has everything, Holt said. Security logs, research files, even Valtor's transmissions. Carter nodded. Then let's make sure it gets to the right people. Briggs raised a brow. And who exactly are the right people? Carter's smirk faded. He knew one person who hated corruption more than anyone. Admiral Jonas Reeve, one of the last few honest men in the Galactic Alliance. If anyone will listen, Carter said, it's Reeve. Briggs sighed. Fine. But if this goes sideways, I want it on record that I voted for disappearing. Carter chuckled. Noted. A final warning. Before they could set course, a priority transmission flashed on screen. Valtor. His image flickered to life, calm, confident, as if he hadn't just tried to wipe out an entire colony. I assume you're feeling victorious, Captain, he said smoothly. Carter's fists clenched. You lost, Valtor. Did I? Valtor tilted his head. Xiphos 9 is gone. The parasite is gone. There's no proof left. And the only ones who know the truth are you. Briggs muttered, "Yeah, this guy's definitely a supervillain." Valtor continued, his expression unreadable. "Walk away, Captain. Live your life. Because if you come after me, if you go after the Alliance..." He smiled. "You won't win." Carter didn't flinch. "We already won, Valtor. You just don't know it yet." Valtor chuckled. "Then I suppose we'll see." The transmission cut off. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Briggs exhaled. "That guy seriously creeps me out." Carter turned back to the controls. "Set course for the Reeve outpost. We're finishing this." Holt hesitated. "And if the Admiral refuses to help?" Carter's expression hardened. "Then we find another way. Because this wasn't just about one mission. This was about holding the powerful accountable. It was about never backing down from the truth. And as long as there was one good man left willing to fight. The war wasn't over yet." The final lesson. As the horizon jumped to warp, Carter leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars ahead. Humanity had always been seen as fragile, a young species in the galaxy, surrounded by stronger, older civilizations. But today, they had proven something else. They weren't weak. They weren't prey. They were resilient. And no matter how powerful the enemy, humanity would always fight back. Because in the end, the truth was the one thing they could never control.